I have 100%ed Hollow Knight. Now you might be thinking, well, it goes to 112%, so that doesn't really mean much. Oh, no. I've, gotten all the achievements. Which means, yes, I've beaten the game on hardcore. Yes, I have been the final Pantheon. So basically what I'm trying to say is, when I'm talking about this game, it comes from a place of love as well as knowledge. I love this game, and I want to talk about what makes this game so good, as well as some of the flaws that might exist. And I should also mention that this gameplay will, in the background of this video, will all be from my Pantheon 5 attempt because I want to show it off, bro. I mean, you don't just beat Pantheon 5 and not show it off at all in a video like this. That'd be sad. Especially because it took me hours to do so. Anyways, sit back, relax, and enjoy the analysis. Now, we're going to start off very simply about talking about the world. And the first thing I want to say is I like how the map plays. Basically, the map plays very up to you. Basically, for most of the gameplay, you get to explore the map chunk by chunk, name by name, like name location by name location. But it's based off of how you go. There's so many different paths to different areas. There's items are found in the same area, like the same place every playthrough, but the reality is you can get access to them in different ways, making your first playthrough super unique. Because in reality, you get to decide where you go, and you get to decide how your playthrough plays out. Basically, my point is having freedom is such a luxury in the day and age of hand-holding and having knowledge of what to do. I mean, going to play an open world, quote-unquote, a lot of the times it's not really just like, oh, go explore the world. No, instead it's, oh, here's where you gotta go. This game does tell you some objectives sometimes, but usually it's very mysterious and very hard to see. What I mean by this is this game does not give you a map, is what I'm trying to say with an objective. In fact, it doesn't give you a map. You see, the game basically does another thing I like. It leaves mystery. Now, I'm not saying all games released right now are not giving mystery to their maps, but one of the nerd problems is that a lot of games just hand you a map and show you everything, and all you have to do is fill out find all the structures there's thrown about. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, that's the name of every Bethesda game. Now, I know I'm comparing, a 2D game, Metroidvania game, comparing it to an open world, but when you play a lot of open world games, you tend to want to compare. Because to me, exploring a map is still the same thing as exploring an open world map. You need to have mystery. You need to have no knowledge. You need to immerse yourself in the experience. And let me tell you, not having a map and having to find your map fragments scattered by this guy, but you have to find them without knowing where you're going, is so crazy. Not only does it make it a lot more immersive exploring the map and filling it out, because you actually feet delivered the map, if that makes sense. Everywhere you walk, the map fills out for you. But the beauty is the way they do it. The map. I'm getting so excited about it, so I'm probably explaining this so poorly. But basically, what makes the map system so great is that you're stuck with a blank canvas. You have no knowledge of how big it is, and the only way to get knowledge is by venturing into the unknown and then trying to find a save point. I love this because especially when you are going into harder areas, it's like it makes it so much more interesting because it's like a maze. When you're exploring, just like in real life when they first explored any continent, it's a maze. You have no clue where you're going. But at the end of the day, eventually, your map will fill out once you hit, a checkpoint, and boom. Seeing the way you walked around fill out a map is so crazy. And even with the map in front of me, sometimes you still will get lost. That's how just amazing this map is designed. Now, I'm here to say basically, I like how in the first playthrough specifically, there's a lot of mystery into what you're getting yourself into while you're exploring. as well as just it's super easy to get lost. And while that can be frustrating to get lost, and also I do admit that having to find Cornifer every time you get to a new area is very frustrating because sometimes he's hidden in weird locations, for the most part I like this system. I like the idea of, the sense of mystery it brings and how great it is to discover an area that you didn't know exists. For example, the Abyss. Do you know how crazy it is to find the Abyss? It's like, oh my god, this whole like hellish world is down here. You don't even think of the fact that the map can explain downwards more. Or imagine finding the Hive for the first time. You're like, what? The Hive? Now I'll admit the Hive is probably the hardest place to find in the game because, if we're being completely honest, it's kind of obscure ways to get in. But even then, point being, finding locations is so much more interesting and exciting than it would be if it just gave, like, hey, here's named locations on a blank map. Imagine if they did that. Imagine if they just gave out blank named locations on a map, and you just had to go near your the words, and then you'll be there. Oh, wow. That's basically what a lot of games do, where they'll, show you where all the major cities in, for example, in Skyrim are. What? That doesn't make sense. Imagine in Skyrim, for example, if you could just, when your first playthrough, you'd walk around and you just see this major city in the distance, and you're like, what is that? And you go to it and you find out it's this major city that's super important. It's Solitude. Imagine! That would be so much cooler than, wow, look, there's already a marker on the map of every major city. I guess I'll go there and explore each one so I can fast travel there. Speaking of which, fast travel on the map. The way they do it is very, very interesting. Basically, there is no easy fast travel. Most of it is unlocked through these things called stags, which are basically horses, in my opinion. And basically, they'll allow you to travel to other stag stations. The catch is, you need to pay a toll to unlock the ability to use each stag station, which means basically you have to explore the world with, money lying around in order to unlock these stag stations. Now, I will admit some of these stag stations are not perfectly placed. I mean, Green Path's one is kind of inconvenient in my opinion. I've never really liked where it's located. But for the most part, these are really cool. Also, having lore of finding every single stag station to find out there's a stag's nest is really, really cool. Also, just knowing that you're riding the last stag is interesting, and there might be babies somewhere, I think. I think that's a cool touch. Now, here's the problem with the map. Beginning of the game. Now, I just talked about how great the map is because there's, there's a there's mystery all over the place, and oh, you have so much choice on what you get to do. There's nothing restricting you. Well, unfortunately, there is a problem. The beginning of the game is very linear. I don't know, a game like this, especially after knowing what it is, it's very tedious to play the first 1 to 2 hours. Especially the Forgotten Crossroads, mainly for 2 reasons. 1, you have absolutely no good movement. Just being able to walk and jump is so boring. As well as the fact that, I don't know, it's Forgotten Crossroads is kind of bland. Yes, you get Green Path as well, and this linear exploration where you can't go many other places. The reality is until you unlock the dash, you really can't go anywhere too exciting. And even then, after you unlock the dash, you can go to Fungal Wastes. And then once you defeat the Manus Lords, then you have freedom. But those first 3 to 4 hours of gameplay is so boring because you just are forced to walk down a path. There's only one path, and you see these other paths, but you can't even access them. It's just very frustrating. Also, having the lack of movement makes it 10 times more annoying. That's just my opinion. I think the major flaw of this game is the first 3 to 4 hours of gameplay. In fact, it was so bad for me that I actually ended up quitting before I got to the Manus Lords because I found it so repulsively boring. Which is sad because, really, it shouldn't be that way. I mean, all they had to do was add a dash, and suddenly a lot of these issues in the beginning of the game wouldn't even exist. Also, I should just mention as well, is just like, the areas you start out in are very bland. I mean, I get it, it's meant to be that way, and yes, I acknowledge that there is a cool feature that the Forgotten Crossroads, the area you start out in, gets completely redone and completely way cooler after you get farther into the game. But like, until then, it's very bland and very unexciting. Which also brings me to something. Even the worst areas of this map have great music. Every single area is very unique in the sense it has its own soundtrack and it has its own unique enemies or takes on very basic enemies. For example, Green Path and the Queen's Garden have very somewhat similar enemies, yet they have their own twist on them. And of course, the music, I should mention, and sound effects. I mean, dude, the music is just iconic. The City of Tears music is just, oh my god, it's too good. It's just too good. And of course, the sound effects, bro. There's very few games where you play it and you just look at it and you go, damn, that sound effect is iconic. For example, the moment I felt this was when I killed one of those, I think it's called a husk. One of those like exploding sheep, so one of the exploding sheep in Green Path where you basically kill it and then explodes into gas. When I killed that for the first time, I actually felt, damn, this is an iconic sound. This will be something I'll remember forever. It's one of those games where it's just, I can't describe it, but saying the sound effects are iconic. The music is so good, and I don't know, I mean, obviously the visuals are just top tier. And the best part is every named location on the map is unique and can be distinguished. I think that's a huge factor into this game because when you find a new area, you know you're in a new area and everything changes. You're like, oh no. I mean, even on the map, everything is changed color according to the area you're in. You can tell when you're in Deep Nest versus when you're in the Crystal area. Crystal Peak, I believe it's called. I don't remember. Damn. Whatever, I should know that. Now let's talk about the items. Now let's talk about what you're supposed to do. Basically, the whole idea of the game is you need to unlock the Black Temple Egg in order to sacrifice yourself and take away the corruption. And the beauty of this game is that very early on, around the very early mid-game, ideally for most people, you will be introduced to this idea of, hey, you need to find these 3 teachers, I believe they're called. And that's the goal of the game. But the thing about it is each area that each teacher you have to find requires specific items. So the game doesn't tell you, hey, go find these items. Instead, you have to find them yourself or just assume, hey, you need items. For example, the one that's inside of the archives or the teacher area, teacher's art library, something like that, requires Isma's Well, how are you supposed to know that you need the Isma's tier? No, you don't know that. So instead, you just go and search the world and hope that you eventually will find something that will allow you to swim in water, or at least acid water. And that's the beauty of this game, is that there's an objective, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. But it's also the downside. Because for someone like me, it can get very frustrating to have to figure out how to get to areas, and I'll be honest, it's sometimes you feel like you need to look it up. In my first playthrough, the amount of times I had to look up things is incredible because, frankly, if you're like me who has no patience for that type of stuff and wants to just get through the game and not have to just guess where things are, well, it's kind of frustrating because you basically need a wiki. Now, again, I understand some people don't play the game like me and just blindly go and go everywhere in the world until they find the item. I'm not that type of guy. After about an hour or 2, I'm done. If I can't find an hour or 2, maybe 3, I'm not going to just sit there. Continue. I'm gonna look it up. The reason why I bring this up is because there's a lot of moments where it can feel like, hey, dude, you need a guide, especially on a first playthrough, because going through areas, like I said, without a map can be very frustrating. Trying to figure out how to get items is very frustrating without having knowledge. I mean, for example, you might not know that Crystal Peak, how to get to Crystal Peak, or you might not even know that, Crystal Peak has an item that allows you to access the Monarch Wings. You might not even know the Monarch Wings exist. For me, it was the Shade Cloak, the version of the dash, which allows you to be invisible for a little bit. I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to get that. I'm just being honest. I had to look it up. It was very annoying. This is kind of one of those complaints. It's like it's one of those things that needs to be discussed. Where's the line for games that require a wiki? technically this game does not require a wiki, and for the most part it's more of just like discovering on your own, but at the same time this can discourage players because without a wiki it's very kind of brutal. And so where does the game draw the line? Should there be, a guide or some sort of like NPC that guides you in the right direction? I don't know. I mean, look at Terraria. There's always the guide or NPC. Imagine if they had that in here, where it'd just be like, "Oh, have you ever gone to Deepness? Or I heard there might be, I don't know. Have you ever gone to the Abyss, bro? There might be something there waiting for you." And you'd be like, "Oh, I checked there already. I didn't know that there might be something there I didn't get." Like, imagine if that existed. That would be nice. I think that would have actually be the salvation to this problem. Not something insane where it's just a pointer at exactly where you go. Because again, you don't want to ruin the mysteriousness of the game and make the game just feel like, oh, here, go here, go here. You don't want to tell people what to do. That ruins the experience. I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of just saying a whole lot of nothing here, and basically my point is I do feel like this is one of those games that sometimes does require a wiki. At least for me it did. Which can be seen as a downside. Overall, I think the map is very, very good, and the other thing is there's a lot of secrets I should mention as well. There's like a lot of secret little paths you can go down, walls you can destroy, fake walls. And finding these are always fun to do, but sometimes they are kind of hard to find, and I had to look them up because if you want 112% the game and get all the items you need for that, you do have to find some secrets that I do kind of consider to be very hard. I don't know. Also, I should acknowledge getting 112% in this game is brutally hard, mainly because, like I said, there's just a lot of things in the game, a lot of items, and I do feel like an item checker or something, or once you 100% the game, getting like an NPC that'll tell you everything you need to know would be nice, because, frankly, it just gets super frustrating having to figure out what you're missing, especially if you are very anti-internet, because you will be so lost on what to do. I mean, heck, even when I had a whole checklist of things from the internet, I still couldn't figure out what I needed sometimes. It's crazy. Just, basically, the point of what I'm trying to make with the map is that I like it a lot. It's very up to you and how you experience the game, which means replaying the game is very, very fun because, at least for me, trying to get it done as fast as possible, more fast than the last time, is so much more interesting than just going down a linear path. I don't know, just like finding out new secrets, new paths, new keys that unlock new things is always so interesting to me. And it makes replaying the game a lot more enjoyable. But that being said, the beginning of the game is really dull, but once you get past that, you will enjoy the map. I think most people can agree. Let's start off by talking about combat. The combat in this game is crazy because it's somehow so complex and yet very simple, which is so weird to describe, but basically it's very simple with many complexities. I don't know how else to describe it. Let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to say is that the items you get from exploring the world that affect your exploration, allow you to explore new areas, also affect your combat, allowing you to use new moves. Which I think is always cool because, having double uses for your items makes it so that exploring is that much more rewarding. The game starts out, in my opinion, like I said earlier, very, very simple. I mean, all you have to your name in the beginning is literally the ability to swing your sword, which is super boring. Basically, the way I see it is I think they started you off very slow in the game in the beginning because they wanted you to get used to it. I don't know, though, because there's not much to get used to. It's, I mean, literally just like, oh, you can jump and you can run. Ooh. And a lot of the bosses in the beginning reflect this, where there's not much happening, which also adds to the dullness of the beginning of the game. Now, as the game starts to progress, you slowly start to unlock more gear, like I said earlier, which makes the combat more and more complex. For example, you can get the Monarch Wings, allowing you to double jump over enemies. You get the Dash, which allows you to dash away from things. You can get the Shade Cloak, which allows you to dash through enemies or through attacks or projectiles. And be invincible to them, is what I'm trying to say. And you can also unlock things like spells. Basically, what makes this so complex, before I get into charms, because that is a huge factor, what makes this so complex is basically the amount of things you could do. Now, what do I mean by this? With just the standard basic items you find throughout the world, plus your, little nail, there's so many little techniques you can learn throughout boss fights that just are so crazy. For example, pogoing. It's one of those things where it's like, what? You could pogo yourself off an enemy and hoping that they don't, jump up. You literally can just sit there and bounce off an enemy and hit them right before you hit their hitbox, and boom, you win. It's that simple. Also, you just have to jump, but let's ignore that part. Now let's talk about the healing. Because the combat by itself is but with healing, it's a lot more interesting. So you usually have, most of the playthroughs, you usually have a lot of mask. Depending on how much you've explored, you can have up to 9, which is crazy, by the way. You would think 9 lives is a lot, but well, it's pretty likely you're going to lose them all pretty fast. You see, the big thing that makes this combat so exciting is souls. Now, basically what happens is you have to attack enemies to fill up your soul meter. And if you want to heal, you need soul. So basically, you're rewarded by being aggressive by getting soul. But the thing about it is you don't just automatically heal. You have to take the slow healing animation using 1/3 of your soul from your meter to heal 1 health points. Now the reason why I bring this up is in boss fights, a lot of times the boss is very aggressive and you have to find openings in order to heal, because most likely than not you're going to be lower on health. And the thing is, the lower in health you get, the more aggressive you have to be, as you need to get more and more soul to be able to heal more. Because if you don't know, there's a soul meter limit. You can have a maximum of 6 health points of soul stored up, and you begin with only 3. So basically, the game expects you to take a lot of damage, and so they basically make you have to play aggressively to get a lot of extra soul, and then they want you to read the boss to be able to figure out when is a good time to heal. I think it's always interesting that basically every boss fight I have ever fought in this game, I have mastered and known when to heal and when is appropriate to heal. Some bosses, it's not appropriate to heal at all until they get knocked over, and some bosses, you literally could get away with healing all the time. Basically, while exploring, it's not common to, have full soul, or full heals, because most of the times you get damaged by enemies, because the enemies in this game are actually kind of tough to defeat, especially in some of the harder areas. That being said, I should mention, the one thing I do like about this game a lot, about the enemies in this game throughout the world, is that they're not too hard. Some of them are kind of annoying, but they're all manageable to kill. And unlike Dark Souls, I actually feel like it's worth my time to kill them. So one of the problems I have with Dark Souls, for example, is that the enemies are just so hard for no reason, and then they just throw numerous amount of enemies back to back to back to back, to the point where it's like, dude, I'm going to run on my heels way before I get to anywhere far into this little exploration I'm on. I don't know, that's one of my major problems with Dark Souls. But I just thought I'd mention that. I think it's really nice that you can actually reasonably kill most of the enemies in this game. Now, you also have spells, I should mention. And spells are busted, but if you're going to use spells, the downside is you have to use souls. And the problem with that is, well, then you risk losing the souls for healing. And so basically, I feel like this is very balanced, because a lot of people tell you, oh, mages are so good. And I kind of agree, spells are good in this game. And I don't use them often, though, but I do admit I do use them somewhat often. But if you do use them, you have to realize you're going to lose soul, which means healing is a lot less likely. And so even if you're a mage, you basically are forced into a playstyle where you eventually have to use your nail or your sword to be able to get soul recovery, which means you have to be aggressive. You have to go and hit him a bunch. And this brings me to charms. Charms is what makes the combat super good, because it elevates it from a to a ooh. Basically, it's helps make the game even more up to you. So the big thing about this game, the common trend is you basically, everything is up to you. There's no, hey, do this. And Charms is that example. The thing about Charms that's so cool is that there's so many different combinations and so many different buffs and so many different ways to build your character, and it's the only way in this game to really build your own class, and there's so many ways you can do this. For example, you want to be a full-on melee character, there's ways to, make your sword reach longer and do more damage and swing faster. If you want to be a pyromancy character, then you have ways to summon a bunch of creatures. And if you want to be a mage, well, guess what? You can be a mage because you can buff your spells and unlock new spell abilities. This means that replayability is way higher. It also means that it just makes the game a lot more interesting because it takes the somewhat bare bones mechanics that are somewhat interesting and it makes them a lot more interesting. I mean, even if you just buff your character with the nail, that's all you do. You buff your sword. I mean, it's still interesting to have a larger sword, more knockback, for example. Well, that's a bad one, but, for example, I don't know, more swing speed. Like, those are cool things. The big thing about Charms that I like is that there's so much customizability, and the best part is it's balanced. There's this thing called charm slots, which basically you have a very limited amount of, and a lot of the good or better charms require a lot more charm slots, which means you can't just put multiple good charms together. No, you have to put a bunch of, like, one good one and some minor decent ones, and then you have something good. I would argue that almost every charm for the charm slot price is pretty fair. Most of them. I mean, some of the pyromancy ones, they're questionable. I mean, yeah, then there's also some bad charms I should mention, or just outright, just weird charms. A lot of the weirder ones are just bad ones, or the ones that usually require you to heal to use, because they put out random effects. For example, there's like this spore charm that releases poisonous spores when you heal. Like, I guess that's cool, but it's not really fantastic in any way. I've never used it. The best part of this is that there's really not many ways to make outright bad combinations with your charms that would outright hurt your character. There's no debuffs or downsides for using charms, which I think is great, because imagine if they made it so that if you use a mage, this mage charm, then your sword swings slower. Like, that would be so stupid. Like, I'm so glad they didn't do that. It just makes the game a lot more enjoyable. I think the best part of this game is finding the optimal charm build, especially in the end game. It's so much fun to go through all these charms to figure out which one is the best setup for what you want. Okay, but that's it for combat. Let's talk about the bosses. Bosses are a big factor in what makes this game so good, because they're hard, but not too hard. In my opinion, on a first playthrough, these bosses are brutal, but once you understand what they are, they're super easy, and that's basically what Sekiro is. It's a game where it's like, it first feels hard, but once you understand each boss, it's super easy. Let's start off with the first boss. False Knight, sorry, okay, the False Knight. The False Knight is really boring. I think it's a very bland boss. I'm just gonna be honest, but it's a good introductory boss. A lot of games will throw introductory bosses to be even easier than that or way too difficult for no reason. I think this is a good balance because, I mean, the only challenge is really just making sure it doesn't jump on you, but you usually can walk away very fast. The main problem with the False Knight is that it's too easy sometimes. Also, you have nothing to your name, so it's very bland combat, in my opinion. It's just hitting and running away, and when I say running, I mean walking, which is very boring. So, there you go. The next boss you'll fight is, of course, Hornet. Hornet, to me, is an alright boss. It's pretty good at really making you understand the combat system pretty well at that point in the game, because it's very fast-paced, but once you replay the game, it's pretty bland. All it really does is do some basic dashes, and sometimes, will be in the air and dash to the ground. Oh no! Like, it's pretty predictable to read. But then again, for a first-time playthrough, I can imagine this being really tough. because you're not used to that. Then we got the peak boss, the Mantis Lords. The Mantis Lords is the boss that I think everyone can unanimously agree is just so fun. And the reason why is because it's super fast paced in a good way. You see, it starts off kind of nice, where it starts off by just taking one on, and he's kind of fast, let's be honest, especially in the beginning. He does some pretty basic attacks, but he does them relatively fast. And then you defeat him. And now you have two of them. And let me tell you, it feels like having two hot plates in your hand. Okay, that's such a weird analogy, but basically it's like you have just the most fun ever, in my opinion, balancing out trying to dodge both of them at once, because while one is attacking, the other one might attack at the same time. For example, one might be throwing this little sword at you, and then out of nowhere, this idiot's also the other idiot's dive bombing at you. It's just so much more interesting and fun to have two things at once, but it's not overwhelming. And I can definitely see why this boss is seen as the best. Like I said, from there, it's kind of up to you where you want to go. So I'm only going to really talk about the major boss fights from here that are very, very notable. The Watcher Knights. The Watcher Knights, for me, was always a struggle one. And I think it is also just one I still somewhat struggle to. The main reason why is because it basically takes what the Mantis Lord does and kind of does it worse. Basically, there's 5 of them, and they slowly spawn in as time goes on. More of them spawn in. But the thing about it is they have a lot of health. And unless you upgrade your nail or do use a lot of spells, you basically probably won't kill them in time before the other ones spawn in. So you'll always have at least 2 of them spawned in. I don't know if you can go above 2, but there'll be 2 of them spawning in at once. I think the main problem with this fight is, 1, it's a very enclosed area, and 2, well, they roll around, but not in sync. See, the thing what made the Mantis Lords fun when there's 2 of them at once is that they always had the same pattern, and even though they're not exactly programmed to do the same move every time, they only had like 4 different attacks, and seemed somewhat balanced with each other. As in, like, you know, they felt like they synchronized somewhat well and didn't feel like random. Whereas the Watcher Knights, one of them could just be rolling towards you, and then the other one could be rolling towards you immediately after, and there's no way of knowing. The main problem really comes down is just their attacks feel so random, even though there's only 2 moves. I don't know how to describe it, really. It's like, you know, you could have one rolling at you, and then the other one's bouncing up and down, and then suddenly, oh, the other one comes back and rolls it back at you again, while the other one's still bouncing up and down at you. It's like, it's so easy to just get ridiculously, I guess the word is clumped, because they take up a lot of space. And this boss fight really also depends on what your items are. If your item set is really good, like if you have Monarch Wings, I mean, this boss is going to be a joke for you. Also, I should mention they have shells, which is very frustrating. I hate how they have a shell. Ugh. I don't know, just like, it's an okay boss. I mean, I've gotten better at it over time, obviously, but I still think it's somewhat hard to defeat, and I can definitely see it being someone else's hard boss. The Broken Vessel is one of those fights that I honestly don't mind that much. I think it's okay. It's not that great, but you know, when I first fought it, it was really fun and enjoyable. I mean, basically, it just dashes all over the place. I mean, that's it, really. There's not much else to say. It'll jump up, dash. It'll dash on the ground. I mean, those are really the most notable things it does. Yes, it does bang his head and summon some things, and also does, I believe... Wait. I also believe it does summon some, you know, men to help him. But they're not that hard to take care of. I do find that it is a little bit infuriating to have to deal with the fact that there's, like, other creatures on the screen while you're fighting the boss, but let's be honest, if you one-shot them there, it's not really the end of the world at all. It's not that unmanageable. Soulmaster. I think Soulmaster is actually a really, really enjoyable fight. It basically is a mage, and I've always enjoyed playing mages in most games I play because their set of moves is always a lot more unique than most others because they have the freedom to use whatever they want. And, well, this guy uses balls of soul against you, basically, and I like it. I think it's not that bad. Also, having a fake out is very nice, because when you finally beat him and you think, wow, I finally beat it, he decides to fake you out, which I think is a move that's unforeseen, and to be honest, it's nice because it doesn't really get reused. If they did it multiple times, it'd be really annoying, because it's like, oh, come on. But they only use it once for this one case, and it honestly works really well, and it's very interesting. And of course, the second phase obviously is not even that much to say. I mean, you literally just walk in one direction, and you basically win. I mean, those are all. I don't want to go in depth into any of the other bosses, really, because there's a lot of bosses, but most of them are just, they're alright. They're not really nothing to talk about. I think the main thing is that a lot of the bosses in this game are very somewhat easy, but the main bosses that you're required to beat the game are the ones that stand out the most, because they have very unique movesets, and they seem to be meant based off of the limited items they know that you will have. You see, the thing is that the problem is with the game is that most of the bosses, besides the final boss and the DLC bosses, they don't know what the items you're gonna have. It's kind of like Elden Ring's problem, where Elden Ring doesn't know what level you'll be, so they just kind of put a random level, it feels like, and you're always over leveled. This game, you could be, have too much equipment or too much gear, and so they kind of just make the bosses a lot easier than they should be, in my opinion. Not always, but sometimes it does feel like the bosses are kind of cheap. Like, for example, hollowknight, he's not really that hard, even though I'd argue the hive mind, the hive, wait, what is it called? The hive? Oh yeah, it's called the hive. Yeah, the hive is relatively hard to find and is probably an endgame area. Another example of this would be Hornet Fight Part 2, which I should also talk about. Hornet Part 2 fight is a lot harder, and I think it's nice because it's basically a skill check. If you can get here, you deserve it, because it unlocks a very, very important part of the game, which is actually side content, surprisingly. It's not even part of the main game. You don't need the King's Crest, I believe. Yeah, no, it's not even required at all to beat the final boss, which I think is nice. There's things like that where it's like, there's just things, like items you don't need at all, but are very convenient. Like, if you went out of your way to fight this Hornet Part 2, and you got the King's Crest, you got the Shade Cloak, which allows you to literally become invincible while dashing. Do you know how great that would be against the final boss? The reality is, most people probably won't even know about it. You have to go out of your way to do that. And of course, let's talk about the final boss of this, Hollow Knight himself. I think he's actually a really appropriate final boss. Well, at least for the base game. Yeah, he's not hard per se. I'd say depending on what items you have and what your skill is, he could either be the hardest thing ever or the easiest thing ever. For my first playthrough, I fought him way too early on, and I didn't even have the Shade Cloak, and I didn't have that many mask shards, and so for me it was a challenge, because I didn't realize I didn't explore like half the map yet, and I got brutally wrecked. But I eventually beat him, and I felt great overcoming him. His attacks are very, readable. That's the best way to describe them. There's not much else to say. But of course, the real final boss is Radiance. Radiance is so cool because it's found in a secret version of the ending that, most people are not going to know about. Where basically you have to do specific steps. You basically have to max out your dream nail, go to the White Palace, and blah blah blah. And eventually, then your stupid little Hornet will help you and fight the final boss, and then you get to Dream Nail, the final boss, and you'll be fighting Radiance, which is the coolest thing ever, because the Radiance is what's corrupting everything. It's the ultimate problem, and the reason why there's a huge, corruption spreading throughout the area is all because of the Radiance. The Radiance is taking over everything. And you're fighting it, and it's like a god. And to be honest, for me, it's actually kind of easy. Its attacks are pretty slow. And for the most part, the cool thing about this fight, honestly, is just it uses projectiles, and the projectiles are very, very, all over the place. So it does require a lot of precision with jumping and dodging. And also, it kind of is like in a cool arena, because there's times where there's literally no bottom. In fact, half the fight, there's literally no bottom, and you just have to stick on your platforms, which are very, very tiny. I like the arena a lot, but the coolest part is when you pogo off the boss. Oh my god, it's so satisfying. Okay, so what if I told you that's all the bosses? No, yeah, I'd be lying. Well, you see, the thing is every single boss in this game actually has a dream counterpart. Well, when I say every, it's an exaggeration, but almost every single major boss in this game has a dream counterpart. Now, I'm not going to talk in depth about all of them because, well, that would just be a drag, frankly, and I don't think that's very interesting. But to sum them up, I think it's a great way to add more content, optional content, that is incredibly difficult. You see, the dream versions of most every major boss usually do 2 times more damage, which means usually they take 2 health per hit, and they also attack way faster, and sometimes even have new moves. Take, for example, False Knight, and take his counterpart, the Dream Knight. Oh my god, the difference between him and the False Knight is incredible. It makes the False Knight look so easy. Or look at the Ultimate Radiance. Dude, the Ultimate Radiance is so ridiculously hard that I actually had to spend 3 or 4 days straight just practicing it over and over and over just to kill it a couple times. That's how hard it is. Or even just the dream version of the Soul Master. And the thing about it is, once you become experienced at the game and get over the skill gap and learn the boss's moves for the base bosses, taking on the dream version will elevate your skill to the next level, and you will feel like a god. Oh my god, once you master the dream versions of some of these bosses, you feel like a legend. And to be honest, replaying the game, it's like the Soul Master, for example, just feels so much slower paced than the Soul Master on, you know, Dream version. I mean, the Dream version of Soul Master is so much harder. Oh, by the way, it's called Soul Tyrant. I know they all have their own names. I forgot what the name of the False Knight is, the Dream version. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And of course, we gotta talk about the Pantheons. Now, I know there's a lot more to talk about, by the way, besides just the Pantheon, but I don't want to talk about every little detail because it would be taking too long. The Pantheon is arguably the worst and best thing of this because it basically forces you to acknowledge your skill against bosses. I like the way they do the Pantheons. You fight 3 to 4 bosses back to back, and then you get a rest and checkpoint, and then you can move on, and at the end of each of the first 4 Pantheons, they introduce a new boss that you've never seen. It starts off very simple with, oh, these guys who trained me earlier in the map, you know, how to slash swords, oh, they're fighting me. Then you fight a painter. Then you fight Sly, a shopkeeper. And then you fight Pure Vessel, which I love that boss fight. That is one of the best boss fights I've ever fought of all time. See, the thing about it is that the Pure Vessel, by the way, I should mention, in Ultimate Radiance, it's like a dance. It kind of reminds me of Sekiro, where you basically have to play to their moveset, and unlike all the other bosses, you have to play their moveset, or else you will get punished severely. Anyways, the best part of these Pantheons is that, one, you can practice in the same area all the bosses in different difficulties. I love this feature, where you basically can practice each boss in different difficulties, and I mean, there's no reward for doing it all in the hardest difficulty, but I think it's interesting to try to do it because it's like, hey, you could literally be able to play all the bosses in the game super easily on the hardest setting. You know how much of a flex that is? I can't even do that. I definitely could if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. And then you have Pantheon 5. I think this is one of the greatest inventions ever because it basically forces you to fight every single boss, every single variant, all in one, which it's actually crazy. Surprisingly, I didn't think it was that hard besides 2 bosses. There's only 2 bosses that gave me a hard time. I should mention these. Of course, you got Markoth. God, Markoth was the biggest problem, but overcoming him, it took me a week to overcome Markoth. He was so brutal. And of course, there was Absolute Radiance. That was a whole nother can of worms. The problem with Absolute Radiance is basically the only way to be able to practice for it is by getting to the fight. which means you have to get through every single boss in the game back to back to back, and the final boss is Absolute Radiance, which you've never fought before. And if you think, oh, well, I fought the normal Radiance, so I could probably destroy it. No, you will not. Guarantee you will not, because it's such a difference in gameplay that it's actually incredible. The difference is so incredible. It's unlike any other boss fight I've ever seen in this game. But if there's one thing I complain about the whole Pantheon system, it's just I don't like having new boss fights unlock in each Pantheon, and the only way to unlock them is by getting to the end, because do I really want to have to restart the Pantheon again? I mean, that's the reality, is most of the times you're going to have to restart it, because you're not familiar with the boss, now you have to learn it. It's kind of annoying. There is so much more to talk about the game, but I can go in depth more about what I like. For example, I didn't really cover the DLCs, like the Grim DLC, which is pretty cool. I mean, and there's just so much other secrets and stuff I didn't mention, but that's mainly the meat and potatoes of this game. I mean, the other thing I want to talk about is the lore a little bit. I think the lore is super interesting. The way you discover, I kind of get why it exists. Basically, you have to read these things plastered all over the place, and you have to read items and descriptions and whatnot. And it's cool, but like I don't like reading, so I don't do that. So I had to actually end up researching it, and the lore is pretty cool. Basically, I mean, from what I understand is the whole place collapsed because the place got corrupted by the Radiance, and the king decided that he was going to put a vessel into an empty vessel with no emotion into the place where the final boss is, but apparently it didn't work out, and now the containment unit is leaking, basically, and so you have to go and sacrifice yourself a empty vessel with no motion. You have to go sacrifice yourself to contain all, the corruption. I think it's a cool story. I really do. I think it's interesting. Let's talk achievements. The reason why I'm talking achievements is because, well, achievements is one of those things that I think games can do either right or wrong, and even though a fraction of people will ever actually experience all the achievements of any game, I think it's always good to talk about, because for people like me who say, I want 100% a game, well, it's kind of important to make sure that you don't discourage them from actually doing so. The way I see achievements is that they need to incorporate most of the gameplay of the game. In order to say you 100% a game, you need to be able to, do most of the tasks of the game, or most of the things you could do in the game, and some extra challenges. And surprisingly, Hollow Knight actually delivered on this. If you decide to 100% this game, you will get so much more out of the game than you would imagine. Yeah, sure, completing the game in skill soul mode and getting 100% completion is very difficult. I mean, heck, I've lost 4 times, 4 saves, 4 different playthroughs down the drain in skill soul mode. I mean, in beating Pantheon 5 took me weeks to do, but at the end of the day, I got so much more out of the game and enjoyed the game so much more. I mean, speedrunning the game and beating in less than, what was it, 4 hours? It seems ridiculous, but it's actually very attainable. And the best part is, is that you get to learn from the game, and you get to learn more about the game, and finding the, optimal routes to take is so fun. If you want to get more out of the game and enjoy the game more, the best thing you could do is 100% this game. It might seem really, really difficult and turn you off, but trust me, you're going to enjoy the game way more, and quite frankly, you're probably going to also love the game more. Appreciate it more. That's what it did for me. I mean, playing the game once is not enough. I don't know. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed the video. That's my analysis of why it makes Hollow Knight so good. I probably missed some things. I'm not really great at this. It's really hard for me to talk about this game because, one, I haven't played this game in like a couple months, so I'm doing this all based off memory. And, well, two, to be honest, I don't want to talk about every little nitpicky detail, and it's hard to figure out what I'm going to talk about and how I'm going to describe things and how I'm going to do in what order. So, if it's not the best thing, I guess it is what it is. I do plan on doing more reviews on games in the future because I honestly really like talking about games. It's one of my passions. I love playing games, and talking about them is something that's super exciting. And so, I'm probably going to start doing more reviews on this channel. Not often, of course, because they take a while to do, and I also have to 100% games, but, once I I'd say once a month I will upload one review, maybe every month, maybe twice a month. I mean, I think that's fair. So if you enjoyed this type of review style content, then feel free to stay tuned, click subscribe, turn on notifications so you can, get notified when I do upload more reviews. I do also play other games, and I do stream games. So if you like this type of thing and you think you'd like watching me play games, go watch my live streams. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and peace.